Activist hedge fund Jana Partners has named Facebook one of its top long positions. This despite Facebook facing another data scandal after revelations it shared information with 4 Chinese firms. And it reflects a bigger theme in tech stocks, the best performing group in the S&P 500 this year, despite a strained relationship with the Trump administration and the growing threat of more regulation. Joining us now to discuss, Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde in London and Dan Ives, Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Tech Research at GBH Insights in New York. So, Dan, I have to ask you first about this controversy, the latest one at Facebook, that they shared information with Chinese device makers, and yet, as you've talked about, the stock has recovered since pre-Cambridge Analytica. Will investors care about this latest hiccup?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at the white knuckle period in March, early April, Zuckerberg navigated the Beltway and then the Brussels over the last month, I mean, there was significant nervousness that you were going to see regulatory issues, major damage to the advertising franchise, and users leaving by droves. Instead, we've seen it contained. I mean, we think maximum $1 to $2 billion of revenue is at risk this year advertising. We've seen minimal defections, and they have navigated the Beltway in Brussels with flying colors. You look at this last Chinese news, this was not the news you wanted to see, but I think investors are a little more immune to this and trying to kind of see to make sure that it was on the phones and not the servers. And I think you see that the initial reaction, it looks like the bark's worse than the bite, at least so far what we see.
We spoke with U.S. Congressman Greg Walden about this, who's very concerned. Take a listen to what he had to say.
With each one of these revelations, it starts a whole nother cycle of what did you know and when did you know it, and did you know it in time to have disclosed it but didn't. I mean, that's not good for Facebook, and Facebook's a great American company. It's a great innovator. It's like these other companies are, but they've gotten to a place where they're under intense scrutiny now, and they got to get it right.
And Caroline, now it sounds like the EU is planning to examine this as well.
Yeah, they're keen to re-examine, so says one particular lawmaker who's actually in charge of enforcing Europe's privacy laws. Remember, they've just got a lot tougher. We've just had the so-called GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, brought in on May the 25th, which makes signing for and getting the user to agree to how you use the data, and indeed perhaps even remove their data entirely, the right to be forgotten as it's known. So Andrea Jelinek has been saying they want to re-examine some of this particular data and the use of it potentially being provided to handset makers. Also, we've heard from other German regulators, in particular a privacy regulator in Germany, saying this is absolutely alarming, and this is exactly why GDPR has come into place to begin with.
Meantime, Dan, I want to take a look at a chart here in my GTV library. We're looking at tech market caps across the board, and the momentum is just continuing. You know, we've been talking earlier in the year about whether there was a bubble that was about to burst. It certainly doesn't look like it. Will these companies sustain these market caps? And if not, why not?
Yeah, we still think we're in the 6th inning of this playing out. You know, ultimately, I think Apple hitting $1 trillion market cap, likely in our opinion, over the next 4 to 6 weeks, I think it's a seminal period. But I think you take a step back, you look at the multiples, you look at the fundamental stories in cloud, you see it in Microsoft, e-commerce, streaming across Amazon, Netflix, and other FANG names, and you've seen the V-shaped recovery in Facebook. I think what you're seeing is just a very healthy market for spending, both on consumer as well as on the enterprise. I think you see numbers come up another 10 to 15%, multiples come up. So I think until we get into early to mid 2019, we still view this as a green light to own these tech names. And any of the macro exogenous issues that we've seen over the last few months, that's the opportunity to own these names during any of these white knuckle periods that we've seen over the last 2-3 months.
Caroline, there are some headwinds coming potentially for Google, with indications that the EU is about to fine Google as part of its big Android investigation. What can you tell us?
Yeah, we could get a fine as soon as July. That's what the latest reporting is saying at the moment, Emily. And it could be significant if they decide to base the fine off the advertising revenues from mobile devices. So this is all to do with Android, all to do with basically the fact that Google, when you buy an Android phone with its Android operating system, it automatically has installed perhaps Gmail, it's got Google Maps, it's got Google Search. And they're saying, look, this is anti-competitive to other search engines. So they could lay on a fine to do with that. They could also revisit the 2.4 billion euro fine they imposed last year, all surrounding the shopping experience that you get on Google and the fact that you're unlikely to find competitors on it. They're saying perhaps Google hasn't done enough to react to that yet, and therefore we could see fines even in excess of 3 billion apparently being put their way once again, because they feel that by day you could be fining Google, but the fact that they haven't managed to tackle head on the fact that they're anti-competitive to do with shopping online.
Meantime, Twitter is being added to the S&P 500. It's interesting if you take a look at the charts for Square and Twitter, which both Jack Dorsey runs both of these companies, both of them up and to the right over the last year, despite headwinds. I've got another chart here in the GTV library showing the company's turnaround at Twitter specifically. Dan, what do you make of the fact that Dorsey has somehow been able to pull this off?
Yeah, I mean, Dorsey's had the golden touch. I mean, if you look at the Twitter turnaround story, it's really been remarkable over the last 12 months. You know, on the monetization theme, what we've seen on user and just engagement, you know, Square, the success speaks for itself. You go back 12 to 18 months, there's a lot of the bears in the street that thought Square's business model was just not sustainable. So I think when you look what Dorsey's done here at Forest for the Trees, I mean, it's one of the more remarkable leadership positions and really jobs that we've seen. Both companies in different ways had challenges. Square, obviously growth, but just navigating some of the competition. And the Twitter turnaround story speaks for itself. I mean, what's happened there has just been a massive turnaround, and we continue to think Twitter goes higher here. But, I mean, Dorsey should be getting a ton of credit here with the golden touch on both names.